Hello, folks. Okay, so I've been badgered a bit this week by a few people. I think they're working together on the flat Earth issue. Why don't I cover it? Why blah blah blah? Well, I have actually spoken about it on previous videos, and that it doesn't warrant my attention at this time because I don't see how it's actually going to help anybody realise that they've got to get themselves right with themselves for what's about to come. But I will expand on it slightly, just to settle the score, as it were. But when I was studying the occult back in the 90s, what I started to realise was, because so much of it's unintelligible. It's totally unintelligible. It's just words, sentences, using certain words you recognise, etc. But when you first approach it, it just appears unintelligible, and sort of the greater the so-called master giving you the crap, the more unintelligible it became. That is until you recognise that if you want to start to understand the hidden, you have to completely and utterly invert your understanding of science, or it doesn't make any sense at all. And what I mean by that is you have to go back to the science before Newton onto Einstein. You have to completely negate that, gravity. Yeah. Even his E equals mc squared is complete garbage. It's nonsense science, and that's why we're in the mess we're in today, because people think science is science. And what you've got to understand is, from Newton to Einstein, all the science that you think is science is actually the nonsense that they've given to the public in order to hide what is kept now in the private. And that is that the Earth, this place, is basically, it's a sound vibration. Light comes second to sound. In the beginning was the word. Okay, and so light is just a variation of sound. Okay. Now you might think, what is he on about? Well, yeah. This is what I'm getting to. How you have to completely and utterly negate the science you think you know as nonsense, because to understand what the occult is explaining, you have to go back to the idea of ether, which it was before Newton gave you gravity. And from that, you've also to understand that in order to try and grasp, or let's just say that the knowledge base before Newton held that this place, this existence, this frequency, this time, whatever, well, not time so much, because that's a count, isn't it? It's not actually a thing as such. Like space also isn't actually a thing. It's a measure. It's all measure. So the science that you've been given is measure, not the actual science, the reality of how this place works. And so what you've got to grasp if you're applying your self to occult knowledge is that what this place is an interplay of electromagnetic fields in the ether. That then, once you can absorb that, you can approach what's classed as occult knowledge in a totally different light. In the same way you can approach the Vedas, the Sanskrit, the Buddhist teaching, all these Eastern formats. They're different to the Western because it's based more in the interplay of electromagnetic frequencies. And that they just put faces, i.e. gods, on to represent this particular frequencies, in the same manner that the West does with the angels, etc. We're dealing with frequencies here, and each frequency has its life form, as it were, or its representation of life in that frequency, which not necessarily has a body, as we would understand it in this dimension. That being the case, you then recognise that the idea of a hologram, a holographic universe, is based in the ether scientific knowledge, and that's its root, as it were. So as you break down the ether science, you come to the idea that this whole thing is actually a holographic image. But obviously it's manifest, it's real, and while you're in it, it's solid. But that's down to the vibration, the sound vibration being at a certain frequency. So that being the case, if this place is a hologram, then the sort of the argument as to whether it's a sphere or whether it's flat is irrelevant. It's an absolute nonsense to even consider spending all your time on it if your intention is to try and help people to grow, help people to recognize that, you know, what we're facing now is an affront and attack on who you are. And your decisions is going to show you where you are actually at. So you can't hide from yourself anymore. This is what's happening today. You know, you're being put upon. You don't even understand what it is. And that's because you've lost the concept of good and evil. I.e., you have completely and utterly lost the idea that evil is something to transcend in yourself, in your behavior, in your thought forms. And you've really got to the point now where you don't understand it exists as a force, as a reality. And that's because while you've recognized the nonsense of religion as an organization that claims to be operating particular doctrine, you've thrown the baby out with the bathwater and completely and utterly negated all of what you were learning through your various cultural upbringing. And that being the case, you know, people will say, well, why is this happening? Well, this is happening today now because, you know, humans have lost their way so much, so far down this spiral. Like as I said, they don't recognize that there is actually an evil force and that we are here to actually oppose it in our own behavior. That, if anything, this is a lesson. This is going to show you that it is real. It's very real. And this evil force has faces. Some you can recognize. You know, your entire political class today, your entire corporate employees, and as a network, as a company, as an organization. This mindset is that evil because it's lost all sense of morality. It's lost all sense of respect and love for its fellow man, its neighbour, as it were. They don't have that anymore. It's all self, me. That's what it is. And that it's about the collection of money, you know, mammon as the prime motive for these people. They are now in that, locked in it. And they're going to be the ones in shock the most because they're sailing along placating what I know to be evil because they don't recognize that it is actually that. Because they haven't recognized that they've fallen themselves into that pattern of behavior as the only important criteria. So then we can understand that, as I've said many times, this is the false judgment, futurism, and that it's being allowed to continue in the sense that it is then going to judge all, and it's a self-judgment. But you're not going to recognize that until you actually recognize what it is you're placating, what it is you are joining for serenity, peace of mind. You know, you actually placate, you're jumping on board with it, and it's a difficult one for people to grasp. But it's not because I'm saying it. That's what you're in at the moment. This is a false judgment. If it wasn't the case that humanity's fallen so far, it'd still have its moral structure. This system wouldn't get a look in. It wouldn't be accepted. So now you're going to all learn what it is you've accepted, what it is you're involved in. And the baby that you've thrown out because of the bathwater being dirty is going to hit you like a ton of bricks, if you get my meaning. So, just on the flat earth, my conclusion is this. Based on my knowledge from past times and the fact that the ether is a more solid science than gravity, as given by Newton through to Einstein, brings you to the idea that this is more than likely a giant holographic event. Magnetism, curved magnetism, which is why nature is all curvature. There's only actually one line of inertia which is straight, and that's the center of the torus field. So that being the case, as a holographic potential that this is, then it's still, again, for me, pointless for me to waste any time or energy on whether the earth is flat, a spinning ball, or not. It's irrelevant to me at this particular time. It's more important that you help people recognise that they need to start to take self-responsibility again for their own lives, especially as we enter going back to school time. Because this spray, if it's giving H1N1 to the flea bags, they're going to spread it to mum and dad and everybody else who, if they've taken the shot, or two of them at least, their immune system is now programmed not to fight this spray. That's evil. That is an evil intent. Would you not agree? You know, first demolish the adults and then spread something through the offspring that destroys the adults. That is an evil agenda. And the fact that you're not waking up to that is, as I've just explained, your wake-up call, because that's where you've fallen. You've fallen so way beyond par on morality, you're not even recognising what's about to take place. So, with that, I will say, till the next time.